It's the 19th day of September 2024. I'm going to be your host tonight, Dana Durnford. Why is my microphone out of place? So September 19th is the last day of the week for us. We do our shows Sunday to Thursday. And tonight we're going to cover the latest reports from the International Atomic Energy Agency that they're going to reuse. I know this is going to sound incredible. They're going to reuse 14 million bags, 1-ton bags, that they picked up. The homeless and the destitute, not academics or nuclear scientists or nothing in universities, but the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. It's an interesting story because they actually picked up 30 million 1-ton bags. So what did they do with the other 16 million bags? 16 million 1-ton bags. If you put a 1-ton bag in the back of a pickup truck, and you take that 1-ton pickup truck bumper to bumper, that's 5 rows of traffic around the planet. But 2.5 rows of traffic around the planet are missing. So it's a significant amount that hasn't been explained away. They just, bloop, let's forget about it. And so they're going to use it for growing food, of course. Japan. And that's part of the poll tonight. Does Japan growing food in a nuclear wasteland in deadly soil prove that the pro-nuclear are hateful terrorists? This is terrorism, what you're talking about. Can you imagine if Iran was growing food in 8,000 atoms per kilogram, which is over 500,000 atoms per square meter? These are just numbers that weren't perceived pre-Fukushima, let alone growing food in it. So let me just... The pictures you're looking at now, this is pictures that I made because there's 149,000 pictures missing. There was 150,000 storage sites of 1-ton bags. So if you go read this story from 2019, the officials at the Ministry of Environment have set up to 30 million tons of radioactive waste will eventually be moved to yet another third-level interim storage facility near the cripple, and calling Fukushima crippled when the buildings are actually gone is quite interesting. And the bags deteriorated after 3 years, meaning the waste has to be repackaged regularly. The bags. So they're talking about 30 million 1-ton bags, which a 1-ton truck can only carry 2,200 pounds, right? Japan is metric. Which is 5 rows of traffic, bumper to bumper, right around the entire planet. So we're talking about a lot of radiation. And so remember, there's 30 million 1-ton bags, not 13 or 14 million that the media is suggesting. Don't forget to click around a little tiny bit if you made it this far. Thank you for joining us. We got a rather important story tonight. And this radiation, not a game. Your body has no autoimmune trigger to defend yourself or your children or your loved ones from the radiation, the biological weapon. This is a biological weapon. And it's stacking up now at an enormous rate worldwide. Basically, the rate you're seeing right now, people are dropping dead from 80 years emissions. It has contaminated the entire biosphere, your drinking water, the air, everything is completely destroyed. And so are the species. But it gets worse. It always gets worse. Never gets better, it always gets worse. This is fun. We're going to start off with this story. We're going to cover the International Atomic Energy Agency's report. It's not a report. It's It's heartbreak and betrayal to humanity and the 8 million species is what it is. It's a complete disregard for everybody and everything. That's what this industry represents. It's an industry of hate and contempt. How's this for a reality check with a question mark? A bus tour to check for radiation. Bus tours by the museum, which is in a nuclear wasteland. The only thing that lives or works in the nuclear wasteland is the homeless and a museum. $50 million museum to be exact. So the museum is taking people out to select places and putting their Geiger counter, which apparently doesn't work, and then using that to quantify how radioactive it is. It's the opposite of science. They measure ambient radiation levels on a road in Nami, which is 7 kilometers away from the biggest nuclear event in human history, most catastrophic event that no one ever conceived before. No one conceived 38 reactor cores melting down. Remember, Chernobyl was a small reactor, it was a graphite reactor. It was nothing at all in comparison to any of Fukushima reactors. And they closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom, 3,000 kilometers away. This story is from Futaba. Of course, nobody lives in Futaba. And the people that wrote the story with this media is not in Futaba, but they used the name to dub and manipulate and deceive and coerce people into being complacent. The Great East Japan Earthquake and Nuclear Disaster Memorial Museum, which was built at a cost of $50 million. And of course, we have numerous pet peeves with this facility. You will too if you're smart. Smart, M-A-R-T, smart. And so when you spend $50 million on a museum, it's got 250,000 objects there from the nuclear meltdown, the earthquake, and tsunami. But mostly the nuclear meltdown is what it's supposed to represent, right? It's in a nuclear wasteland, and this is how they bring people there, and then that quantifies as people who visited Futaba. But Futaba, of course, no one can live there. But it's used to artificially inflate the numbers of that area, and then that will make people complacent who don't know any difference down the road and say, well, if all these people were there, then it must be okay. We can move the kids there, honey. And besides, they're going to give us $20,000 to relocate, which is what they're trying to do, right? They're paying people enormous amounts of money to go into a nuclear wasteland, and so they got medical research for many decades coming up. And there's a story that we covered, and I'll find it here in a second for you. And I'll show you the absolute ludicrousness of that museum, the insanity of how evil this industry is a chess player, and its idea is to promote death and disease and destruction through radioactive fallout. All nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools. And so if you eat food, here we go. And this story is an astounding story. Here we go. So we'll come back to this story, and we'll pick up right there. A tour like no other. So there was this story that came out in 2019. Many of the 42 entities tossed out records from the quake, but it's not actually just a quake. And you can see a picture. The municipalities in Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima, which are the nuclear wastelands themselves, reported throwing out the records. And these are the records of people from the nuclear accident that volunteered and everything else. the documents that have already been discharged, including notifications from the central government and a list of names of the volunteers, workers. The preservation period had expired and we don't have space to preserve all the documents. Well, the museum, of course, has 250,000 objects, and I'm sure that it's a $50 million museum. They were building it at this time. And so I'm pretty sure that the museum would have wanted the records of Fukushima, nuclear accident, and what followed, wouldn't they? But they threw all that out. So back to this museum story that's taken people out on tour buses at select locations. It's the same location every time, been power washed, I'm sure. Participants get off the bus to measure radiation. Well, they're not measuring the radiation. The tour guides from the museum are in the grass and elsewhere, yet they don't show any evidence of that. And they trigger a triple meltdown. There's no such thing as a triple meltdown. There's triple meltdowns. And we see this all the time where they leave the S, the plural, the Futaba-based museum. Futaba, of course, is abandoned. It's a nuclear wasteland. That's one of the places where we know they had 14 million one-ton bags of radiation stored. Because nobody's going to go back there. It's within sight of the ongoing nuclear meltdowns. This is first designed to give people a sense of how radiation, which remains a huge problem even after 13 years, 15 people from both within and outside Fukushima Prefecture joined the inaugural August the 4th tour of the town of Futaba and Nami. Both Futaba and Nami was abandoned for 7 years, which means you should have abandoned it permanently. But this industry that people are given a free pass to, this industry only gets away with this because everybody's silent. And look at the response from just me talking about this subject. I'm under siege. I've been arrested multiple times. I've been shot at. I've been attacked. I've been threatened repeatedly. Like, they phoned me up on the phone and threatened to put a blowtorch to me if I didn't give up. And I'm sure for the average person, they probably would have quit. But I think the world deserves somebody who's honest having a conversation. I really do believe that. The degenerate government has set a long-term goal of reducing the ambient radiation levels 0.23 microsieverts per hour, which is equivalent to 1 millisievert per year. 1 millisievert. Which is 1,000 microsieverts, by the way. And the dose rate in the vicinity of the museum was only 0.05 microsieverts per hour. It's in a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by nuclear wastelands. Like, they picked up the bags outside of Futaba and Okuma, and then brought the bags there for storage because it's abandoned. So how can they pick up 30 million one-ton bags around that community, but there's nothing in the community? How does that actually work? Which is within sight of ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns. And how does that work? And the radiation level in the bus rose to 0.3 microsieverts per hour. Now, the Geiger counter they're using only measures, at best, gamma. A government-designated difficult-to-return zone is not a government-designated. It's a nuclear wasteland, like everything. Just because the government designated something, they didn't designate all the other communities that people are living in that are incredibly radioactive today. And a woman in her 60s who came from Koriyama, which is a nuclear wasteland, said the tour made me realize once again the horrible nature. But she's coming from a nuclear wasteland in Koriyama. Bear with me. I just want to show it to you because it's unbelievably important. And my worry is that somebody who happens upon the video, this documentation, this presentation, and doesn't see the actual documentation itself, won't understand the actual horror of the story. Koriyama, with 341,000 people, has 162,000 counts per minute per square meter of cesium-137. And for some reason, in their minds, nothing else exists, only cesium-137. This was UNSCLEAR, United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Radiation, which is UN. Anything from UN is completely untrustworthy. So average disposition density of cesium on the soil. Why would you only include cesium? The reactors don't run on cesium, they run on uranium plutonium. And so the second line is, and you see the population in each of those communities, 185 counts per minute was typically an evacuation zone pre-Fukushima. Now thousands of atoms per square meter. They couldn't care less. They just throw them under the bus and they wear the $5,000 suits and pretend that they're human when they're not, and you are. So you got victims coming from a nuclear wasteland that are suffering from brain damage because they live in a nuclear wasteland. It's impossible not to have brain damage from the radiation when you live in that environment. You can dress yourself, you can drive your car, but you have brain damage. You're not able to think rational. You're not a very good chess player if you live in these communities. A special exhibition titled Fukushima Radiation is currently running at the Memorial Museum through November 25th. A second bus tour to measure the air dose rate will be held at no cost October 13 for 20 useful idiots. And then there was this other story. Don't criticize the government or TEPCO, the museum guides were told in 2020 when they opened the facility. $50 million for a museum to trick people into coming into an incredibly radioactive nuclear wasteland, which probably was cooked up by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the enemy of humanity. Tour guides are bristling at the instruction not to criticize the central government or Tokyo Electric Power Company when speaking to visitors at a recently opened memorial museum. Everybody goes there will eventually get sick. You're in a nuclear wasteland, for goodness sakes. In the town of Futaba, which co-hosts multiple nuclear meltdowns. And so the people go there don't know any better. And about 150 items from 240,000 items collected from the nation are on display at the facility opened by the Fukushima Innovation Coast Framework Promotion Organization. It cost $50 million US. $50 million to build a building. A shit building. It looks like shit. And they couldn't even keep the records from the nuclear meltdowns there. They let the communities throw them out, which was in 2019, but the building was started in like 2018. It wasn't open until 2020. Each guide was also asked to write down a script of what they intended to say. Imagine you're a guide and you can't get the job until you write down a script of what you want to say. Then the draft was checked. The script was checked and revisited by the facility staff. They were told that if they did criticize the Pacific organization, like the government or TEPCO, their talks would be stopped immediately, the tour would be stopped, and they would be fired. If you criticize TEPCO or the central government on the radiation. And included instructions to contact and consult with the facility staff. So if you want to change the script, you had to contact the staff first. This is desperation. And all you want is a perfect slave, right? It really is an idiot society. bless their hearts, but they're a bunch of morons. Japanese are morons. The whole country now is one big radioactive sewer. All their food and water is contaminated. Their air is contaminated. And because they've been inbred by culture for so long, they're incapable of producing an honest person. Or if the guide was contacted by media representatives for an interview, they had to contact the staff at the museum before they can do an interview. Not a museum, a propaganda machine. It's a bizarre propaganda machine. Japan briefed the international community, this was another story from yesterday, on nuclear plant. They don't even use the word nuclear, they put N plant. And we see that with this media all the time. They won't use the word nuclear. N plant. So everybody's supposed to figure it out, are they? Water really... It's a culture that's not worth saving as far as I can tell. They're shipping food from a nuclear wasteland, poisoning humanity from every direction you can conceive. The briefing was conducted on the sidelines of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is not an international agency. They don't have any authority. They don't have any sovereignty. They don't have any detention powers. They don't have any judicial powers. They don't have pensions that are recognized by any government agencies. They're a corporation that goes under a fictitious name of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is a subsidy of the United Nations, which is a known military-industrial complex. 195 militaries, which used to be the League of Nations, pre-Nagasaki, Hiroshima. As world leaders engage in general debate. Well, world leaders, under the constitutions in the United States, and Bill of Rights in Canada, and Magna Cartas in Great Britain, it's illegal for leaders to get together and conspire. And that's what this is. At a corporation with the same structure as McDonald's. Mentioned Japan's release of radioactive tritium treated water. You should be outraged and heartbroken that this organization existed another single day, and that all your checks and balances have been co-opted and are weaponized against you and your loved ones and your friends and your family. And the only spot you got in this universe that is habitable, which is quickly now becoming uninhabitable due to the perpetual, endless radioactive emissions. Every nuclear plant is hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools. All the fuel pools are still splitting atoms, and there's no containment. Look, we're talking about a planetary, biosphere-wide poison that you can't perceive. You can't see it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or perceive it. And it attacks everything with replicating cells, and it destroys everything. There's nothing on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it, and it meets all the attributes of a biological weapon. I haven't given up on humanity. I haven't given up on humanity. I know it seems like that sometimes in my dark times, but I haven't given up on humanity. I refuse to give up on humanity. I don't know why, but I refuse to give up on it. I still believe that humanity can defeat the most evil thing in this solar system, which is the nuclear industry. It's a despicable, disgusting, parasitic, genocidal, mass-murdering, omnicide machine. And this hatred. This is a terrorist organization, period. It's the only thing out there that should have the word terrorist labeled to it. It is orders of magnitudes above all definitions of terrorism. You can't perceive it, and it's permanent harm. So do you really believe that nothing got out of these buildings? Because that's their story. That's what they're saying. Nothing got out of the buildings, and whatever it did was in tanks, and it was treated, and the only thing getting out is tritiated water. That's what they're telling you. It's literally the furthest thing from the truth imaginable. You can't when you pour water over these nightmares, the water's so radioactive, 2 liters of it will kill you when you walk past it. And you really think you're going to put that in a tank where you're going to end up with at least 1.4 million sieverts? 3 sieverts is a lethal dose. 1.4 million sieverts in a tank of and they acknowledge this, that's just going to be better. You can't filter that because you can't get back near the filter ever again. Because, just radioactive fallout, just a radioactive fallout landing in your community. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was clearly shown that the energy could pulse through 6 feet of dirt and harm you, destroy your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells. So you really think that when you put enormous, prodigious amounts into these tanks, there's many problems with that story, because what happens is if you put gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas in a tank, it settles down, the neutron bombardment starts another chain reaction. It'll burn a hole at least through the tank, and everything will rush out of the tank. But a lot of, like we've seen in Mayak, the tanks explode, right? What they done at Hanford, they said they got 170 tanks, so they were 300,000 gallons per tank. They got them dead deep into the ground with just the top of the tanks at the surface, right? And so they built these facilities to encase the sludge, basically, in glass. And once they turn the facility on, they can never go back in the building again, is how they put it. So they spent like $17 billion in the facility, but it's still not running. Been at it for decades. It's still not working. It can't work. It's just a distraction to keep the money rolling in. But what they don't tell you was they put the equivalent of over 1 million of these tanks, they dumped it directly into the soil. I think it was 250 billion gallons, which is equal to an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, and wrapped around the entire planet more than once, of lethal radiation from a chain reaction. It was dumped directly into the soil right alongside the Columbia River, which feeds around 25,000 farms downstream towards the Pacific, and millions of people in the communities along the way. And ultimately ends up in the Pacific Ocean on top of that, what doesn't get ingested and poisoned. And every time you look at the nuclear industry, you see this legacy of destruction, permanent destruction, because it'll be here long after the human experience. So when International Atomic Energy says water, and it says it's treated, and it says it's just tritium, the buildings are actually gone. And each of these buildings had at least 9 reactor cores into it. 8 of them were stored in double fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. This is only 2 of the 4 reactors, by the way. There's 4 of these reactors went kaboom and lost their entire inventories for 40 years. Of inventories. Like, I'm not doing this for fun. This is not a game. I haven't been at this forever and ever and ever because this is easy either. I get how difficult it is to articulate this story, and I realize that we're not going to have any academics who are going to show up and walk you through this disaster so that you can make an informed decision based on facts instead of these fantasies that they put into your head. So suggesting tritium, treat it. You can't treat, and you can't call whatever came out of this place later water. It will never be water again. By the liter, 2 liters is a lethal dose of this stuff. You can't treat that. And you certainly can't pour it directly in a tank because you couldn't build another tank on the site if you'd done that to a single tank, which means the tanks are empty, which is no big surprise because the numbers we're talking about, you can't walk past the pipes and the hoses that would carry that stuff because that would be lethal doses too. So everything is allowed to flow directly into the ocean, which was always their oh shit plan anyway. They built these facilities, they engineered these facilities, spent about $500 million on the foundation of these sites. And the idea is when it goes China syndrome, it'll go down into an old riverbed typically, that'll wash it directly into fresh water or the ocean. When you look at what they've done to the Great Lakes, if you look at what they get done to the Great Lakes and it doesn't horrify you, you need to take a second look. The Great Lakes are surrounded. This is the third biggest aquifer on the entire planet of fresh water in Canada, United States. And they have contaminated every facet of it with nuclear power plants and nuclear dumps and fuel fabrication facilities on the biggest aquifers on the planet. Why would you build all your nuclear reactors on the biggest aquifer on the planet? The only reason you would do it is because you're trying to destroy that resource. These are terrorists. That's what this industry is only good at. One thing is that being a terrorist, and it excels leaps and bounds above every other. It's strictly terror. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, and that was only 3% of the land. And they're going to reuse that soil to grow food in. Representatives from the industry ministry, the worst humans imaginable, has explained that the country has begun trial work to remove nuclear fuel from a reactor. And if you go and read all the headlines, like a robot is cleaning up Fukushima. But in reality, it was not a robot. It's a mechanical arm that they spent, $14 million to build? And its whole job is to get 3 grams. You know why? Because once they get 3 grams, that arm is so radioactive they can never go near it again. 3 grams. Each building had 6 million pounds. There's around 25 million pounds missing. And former residents still remain unable to return to some districts in Fukushima. Nobody should be in Fukushima or Tokyo or any of the 14 prefectures that were banned by 55 countries the food from it for over a decade. Japan briefs international community. And you'll just get the same story over and over and over. Meltdown stricken. Their job, and calling it stricken, crippled. Like, these are not stricken. These are not crippled. These are catastrophic destructions. Degenerate Rafael Grossi pledged to monitor the water release from the first drop to after the last. And we covered that when he originally said it, of course. Like we've been doing for years and years and years. Plan to reuse decontaminated soil in Fukushima is safe, says the International Atomic Energy Agency. And anybody who reads Japan today and don't have contempt after, the requested article is expired. So I grabbed that article on September 11th. And I wasn't doing very good. So I just threw it in the URL in a folder, right? So I can come back and when I'm feeling better, hopefully I was feeling better, I'll be able to come back and read the story. So this was 7 days later. The story was gone. They only kept it up for a couple of days and then took it down again. And I apologize for not. The requested article has expired. But how can you have an article in the media, particularly a major media like Japan Today, and it expires in less than 7 days? September the 11th. And that was the 18th. So that was 7 days later. That was yesterday that I started screen capture. I was going to do this show last night. The requested article is expired. No comments. So on to the next. There was a lot of stories. There was probably, I think it was around 12 stories. Japan's plan to reuse the Fukushima soil for infrastructure gains International Atomic Energy Agency support despite concern. And the International Atomic Energy Agency claimed the soil meets safety standards, and critics argue spreading the contamination is dangerous and could lead to cancer risk. What about heart problems and liver problems and lung problems and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline? What about all that? What are we doing tonight anyway? 16 people. That's pretty good for the last show of the week, is it? I know I've been doing the show for a decade. 5 days a week, but... Does Japan growing food in a nuclear wasteland and deadly soil prove that the pro-nuclear are hateful terrorists? We got 25 votes. I got 15 people on the show. And last night's show, I lost 3 thumbs up this afternoon. I got after 11 hours or something. They took 3 thumbs up away on my video, which only had 33 thumbs up. Like, the censorship on me is terrorism. That is proof that these are practicing terrorism. So they show you this picture right here as if this is the facility and this is the soil. But we're actually talking about 30 million of those bags you see there, those 1-ton bags. 30 million. And this is the most bizarre story imaginable. Japan has won. It's an interesting way to frame this narrative, isn't it? And so what they're trying to do is put the International Atomic Energy Agency as the authority by framing that narrative that particular way. To support the International Atomic Energy Agency for its plan to use millions of cubic meters of soil contaminated with radiation. It's not just like they spent $28 billion picking up 30 million 1-ton bags. 28 billion. The soil and debris have been collected from thousands of square kilometers of land that was contaminated. So thousands of square kilometers were contaminated, but the soil is actually only from 3% of the land. They didn't try to clean. And you can't clean it up by having a bunch of homeless people picking up topsoil. It doesn't work that way. It's radiation, stupid. 3 of the 6 nuclear reactors at the site releasing radiation into the atmosphere. I mean, you're talking about 30 million 1-ton bags. And these pictures, there's 150,000 sites that would look like this. 150,000 sites. And we're talking everything is radioactive. After a 16-month safety review, the degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency delivered its final report to the Environment Minister. The final report to the Minister. There's about 1,000 pictures available of the 1-ton bags. There's 150,000 sites where they stored the 1-ton bags, which means there's 149,000 minimum pictures that are missing. And I created over 3,000 pictures so far to help articulate what you don't see, what you can't see. Expressing support for the government's plan to reuse vast amounts of soil and debris with low levels of radioactive contamination, it's talking about 8,000 atoms per kilogram, which is over 500,000 atoms per square meter. That's the very definition of a nuclear wasteland pre-Fukushima, by the way. The non-study includes examination of existing and term storage sites, which is a nuclear wasteland, and recycling techniques being trialed in the nuclear wasteland. It's such a bizarre story. It's hard to imagine the world not going to war against Japan. It's hard to perceive that the world's not gone to war that the world has not gone to war. And look at this stupid idiot over there. The Degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency report concluded that the recycling final disposal of the soil were consistent with their safety standards. So clearly they have no safety standards. And you can't find out who she is. In none of the stories did we see her name. We get his name, but we never get her name from the IAEA. And cowards. The government will continue its efforts. What, to genocide and omnicide the entire planet? Fully considering the report's finding to promote more effective management, recycling of the radioactive waste. Recycling radioactive waste from a nuclear meltdown. So they don't have to pay for storage. Uh, 14 million cubic meters of radioactive soil carefully collected over the past 13 years. It's 30 million cubic meters of radioactive soil, not 13 million, 14 million. It's 30 million. So where did the other 16 million cubic meters of radioactive soil go? They don't explain that, do they? And under the government's proposal, as much as 75% will be used for construction of road embankments, railway infrastructures, land reclamation projects, and even for agricultural projects, which works out to over 500,000 atoms per square meter in where you're going to grow food. Why would you do that? Why would you consider, why not just dig a big hole and bury it down there? Why does it have to be reused? Why do you have to go that route? Why are you that disconnected? Why are you so friggin' evil? Why can't you just dispose of it properly? Why not do that? How could that be bad? And in fact, the amount of energy they're going to put into recycling it is about 10 times more than the energy they would if they just dispose of it in a deep geological repository. Would be 1/10 of the energy of what they're going to do compared to what they want to do with it. They're going to do 10 times the work so they can reuse it. You can't clean it. And not only that, the majority of it is being burnt in incinerators. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. Why is the world sitting in silence while these terrorists are destroying everything we covet? Governments determined to classify it as a resource that needs to be used. So the soil contamination were previously set at 100 atoms per kilogram. That's been lifted to 8,000 atoms per kilogram. And he said 8,000 becquerels is still not a particularly high number in comparison with the contamination everywhere. The whole place is so radioactive. 8,000 becquerels doesn't seem too bad. And I can show you a horrific amount of headlines where it's 29 million atoms per square meter, for instance, in Tokyo, where anybody with a grain of education would abandon Tokyo immediately when they see these stuff. And the world seems to just, post-Fukushima, just disappeared their self-worth, their consciousness. This is still radiation that will find its way into a wider... Well, of course, used in projects that still haven't been identified. The risk of increasing cancers may be small, but it's not zero, he said. No. Just a single atom. So say there's 8,000 atoms in a kilogram. A single atom in your body ultimately will result in a tumor. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, which displaces your red blood cells for each white blood cell. And because the atoms in your body is pulsing this energy every second, almost at the speed of light, every direction. So it's wrecking your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, every second. Your body has to repair every one of them, And it has to attack the source. And it does that for every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. So we're talking about a prolific amount of white blood cells being produced from all the joints in your spleen. So every one of your joints, your knee, every one of your knuckles, and every joint on your body produces white blood cells. But you have a special organ known as a spleen that produces white blood cells. So if you get a cut, your body attacks it for 5, 6, 7 days and repairs it. And then your red blood cell count comes back up and your white blood cell count drops back down. And the red blood cells carries oxygen nutrition. This is the same for animals, insects, humans, everybody else. You always got to include all 8 million species. You can't just let me see what I got done here. I can't believe we made it back tonight. I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be able to do a show tonight. It's been a rough week trying to get back up and running. We've been down. There's been a lot going on in the 2 weeks previous. Spent a week on research expeditions, covered 3,000 kilometers of coastline, 1,100 ponds. There was nothing in the ponds, not a fish jumped in any single pond. And in 2 ponds, we've seen a handful of ducks. But the other 1,098 ponds, there was nothing. I mean, nothing. And I mean, it was flat weather, calm weather. There was no migratory birds on the coastline whatsoever. In a place which is supposed to be the biggest seabird migratory on the planet, with 46 million migratory birds. And this is 4 years of studying that here on the Atlantic, after 6 years in the Pacific, where we've done expeditions for 4 to 5 months on the ocean at a time without coming home. And it's an exhausting reality for me. I don't know about for anybody else, but I've been through the shit for a long time, trying to find out if it was real originally, and then coming to the absolute horror realization that this is an extinction level event. But to continue to see these types of connotations that an increase in cancer may be small, and suggesting that there's any cancer, but this stuff causes heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. It's just a fraction. Because you compromise your immune system, you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. An associate professor at Tokyo International University anticipates a backlash similar to the release of the Fukushima wastewater. So the fact that that professor called the Fukushima water wastewater means she's one of the lowest forms of life conceivable. There are groups that will, for example, use this as an excuse to try to ban more imports of fruit and vegetables grown in Japan. But the aim is primarily political, suggesting there is no harm. They didn't pick up 30 million one-ton bags because it's like a banana and a potato chip and walk in sunshine. And so this is their picture of the bags. But there's actually 150,000 sites where they stored one-ton bags. 150,000 sites where they have the one-ton bags stored. But they show you this stuff. 5, 6, 7, say 10 bags. We'll divide 10 bags into 30 million. And that's millions of sites of one-ton bags, right? Hong Kong, mainland China, and Russia still have bans on imports of Japanese products as a result of the release of water from the Fukushima plant. As a result. of the release of water from the Fukushima plant. As a result, so they allegedly started releasing water last year in 2023 in August of 24, right? But when you look at the buildings, this was right away. The buildings were destroyed. Yeah, I mean, you tore down the extra stuff over the next couple of years, but this is 2013, but that's 2011. That's reactor 4, that's reactor 3. So they're saying nothing got out of the buildings that don't even exist anymore. And then every academic on the planet went along with this story. Every nuclear scientist on the planet that's seen these pictures, and they did, knew the reactors were gone and knew the fuel pools, which typically got at least 4 reactor cores in each one. There's usually 2 at the top. Not usually, but there is 2 fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. They're stuffed with reactor cores because you don't have a repository anywhere on the planet. And this stuff gets into your food, you're going to be sick for the rest of your life. If it gets into your children's food, the health consequences are immediate and catastrophic. And I don't understand why the world doesn't cover life anymore. Like, we wouldn't have this misery, we wouldn't have all the illnesses and diseases we see if it wasn't for the nuclear industry. The cancer epidemic started in the 70s, after all the nuclear atmospheric weapons war. They called it testing for some reason. It's the same bomb, it's the same radioactive fallout as the war. Clearly, it's a war. Despite assurances from the IAEA, which is your worst enemy imaginable, that all tested water offshore at the facility have shown no evidence of spikes in radiation levels. So nothing got out. The International Atomic Energy Agency, September 10th. Japan's Fukushima soil recycling disposal plan meets safety standards, the International Atomic Energy Agency says. It is consistent with the international safety standards. Apparently they got no standards. So then it sends you over, it links you over, and that's the only spot I found the link, by the way, to the report, which was from the degenerate site themselves. And so I think I read 25 pages of it today. And it's the same stuff the whole way through, right? It's literally the exact same stuff all the way through when you read it. I glanced through a lot of it, but I started trying to comprehend what was going on so I could tell a story. Volume reduction, recycling of removed soil from the decontamination of land. So you decontaminate it, now you're going to grow food in it. You didn't pick it up because it was harmless, you picked it up because it was nasty. And now you're going to grow food into it. By the way, the third biggest donor to the International Atomic Energy Agency is Japan. But there are about 30 million cubic meters of removed soil. There's actually 30 million. I showed you that at the very beginning, by the way. And about 300 cubic meters of ash from incineration of radioactive organic material stored at the interim storage facility. Well, first off, they can't get rid of the sewage in Japan because it's too radioactive across the country. They can't get rid of the ashes from the incinerators across the country because it's too radioactive. And the sediment from the water filtration facilities, they can't get rid of that because that's too radioactive. And in 2012, just one area had 50,000 one-ton bags of sediment from the water filtration facilities of one-ton bags that was too radioactive to be used as, it would typically be used as fertilizer. So, you got hundreds of thousands of people. The water is being sucked out of this aquifer. It's filtered, and then the sediment left over is unbelievable fertilizer, right? Now it's so radioactive they can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of the garbage, you can't get rid of the ash from the incinerators, you can't get rid of the sewage, and you can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities. What are they going to do with all that stuff, I wonder? And by the way, in order for that to exist, everybody has to be radioactive in the most terrible way imaginable. And let me explain that to you. The cancer, Japan's cancer authority, in 2012, said there was an extra 865,000 cancer patients. Not everybody's getting diagnosed. Not everybody has health care. Not everybody gets cancer right away. It's just not even the tip of the iceberg what we're talking about. This is insanity. So you have a spike of 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. 6 out of 10 Fukushima children have diabetes, and the head of Tokyo medical clinics were saying we're expecting diabetes in the children of Fukushima prefecture. 14.2% of every 100,000 children born across the entire country need open heart surgery to correct congenital malformation, like holes in their hearts. 13,646 children out of 38,000 have thyroid tumors 2 centimeters or so. Well, their thyroid is only 1 by 2 centimeters. Ours is 2 by 3 as an adult. A child's is only 1 by 3 centimeters. So a 2 centimeter tumor on the thyroid is a massive tumor. Not only that, the thyroid makes hormones for the entire body. And children are developing. And so when you have those particular attributes, it also means you're going to be producing radioactive stem cells in the skeleton. So you're developing children, producing radioactive stem cells and radioactive hormones for the rest of their life. Then how is that going to work out for all the insects and animals and birds, I wonder? Because children are 1,000 times more vulnerable than an adult, and birds and insects and that, and small mammals and animals, are thousands of times more vulnerable. And this is why we're seeing an extinction event. And this is why we're seeing Japan with the lowest birth rate worldwide. Waste minimizations, reuse and recycling. Why would you reuse and recycle nuclear waste? Why not just put it in a deep geological repository that you've been screeching about for decades? Why reuse it when it's 10 times more energy to reuse it? Why do that? Why take the most evilest route imaginable? Why do they even pretend that they're human, I wonder? Because that's all they're doing, they're pretending they're human. They removed soil, which is 30 million one-ton bags. They spent $28 billion, and they used the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants that don't speak the language to collect it. And then why are you calling that an important resource? You didn't pick up 30 million one-ton bags because it was a fucking important resource, you despicable, disgusting parasite. You revolting parasites. You unbelievable parasites in this industry. You lowest forms of life possible, you disgusting maggots. You insidious parasitic. It's just unspeakable. It's not despicable. It's not monstrous. It's terrorism. It's outrageous. How can you call radiation an important resource from nuclear fallout? I've never heard that particular attribute ever framed that way ever before. And therefore, the Ministry of Environment in Japan is evaluating options for recycling it because it's an important resource. Radiation at 8,000 atoms per kilogram is not an important resource. It's a dirty bomb, you crazy lunatics. Just nasty. These are nasty, evil, atrocious, monstrous, loathsome. It's shocking, right? This is hideous. It's unforgivable that they do stuff like this. If these options are proven safe, and who's going to challenge them? No one's allowed to challenge their assertions. I've never, ever, ever seen anybody challenge their assertion. The media simply won't tolerate it. Not media, the jackals that acts as if they're journalists. How can you pick up 30 million one-ton bags and then suggest that now it's an important resource? These people should be convicted of crimes against humanity and disemboweled. The removed soil may be an important resource, and therefore the Ministry of Environment in Japan is evaluating options for recycling it. It just defies any rationale that this could, like, how the hell did we ever get to this kind of dystopia where the most monstrous suggestions are what they do? I mean, this is leaps and bounds ahead of any horror movie Hollywood could ever dream up. They're so far removed from reality. I mean, the experts, and they use that term 160 times in this report, 160 times. And they never do say who these experts are. They just call them the experts. The experts. And I don't know, maybe, like, it's been a long week. There's been tough shows. And then I had to work like a dog yesterday because it was the last hot day. And I definitely shouldn't have done that. That I'm not even recovered, and that took all the good out of me. I'm glad to have it done, mind you, and it was necessary because we got to take care of our equipment so it can be used other years. Maybe I'm just too burnt out. Provide advice and support to Japan for these activities. A team of experts, and that narrative, a team of experts, was used 160 times in this 86-page report. 160 times. And we don't know who that team is. They don't tell you who the team of experts is in the final report, which is what you're looking at. Removed soil is characterized, treated. You can't treat radiation. And stored. Demonstrate the safety of using recycled soil in construction and agricultural. So, like, why would you take over 500,000 atoms per square meter and grow food in it? Why do that? Why not just put it in a deep geological repository? Why go through all of this so that you don't have any waste and you can say the nuclear industry is a good industry, I guess? I mean, these experts are incredibly education. They got degrees coming out of they're unbelievably wealthy. They got incredible power and influence. And their job is to cut your throat by signing a piece of paper. That's how they make all that money. I can't understand why the world sits in silence and lets a bunch of monsters from a nuclear industry destroy the future of everybody and every species. And the destruction is imminent. It's prolific in every direction you look if you're smart enough to understand the basic principles of how radiation works. You can't deny it. Recycling nuclear waste and growing food in it. One district is used in removed soil for agricultural embankments. So what do you need for agricultural, for food to grow? You need water, right? What do you think happens to the radiation when you add water to the soil? What does the plant do with that? It sucks it up, right? It's impossible not to have radioactive food. And one of the premises of the ISF used to remove soil for road embankments. So they looked at recycling of radioactive waste in various countries like United Kingdom, Belgium, and Germany, United States of America. And then, because they're doing it too. The industry is one great big hate machine, and it seems to take great pleasure in poisoning every species on the planet and pretending they're the good guy. There's, like, if I was allowed to go there when they're doing these meetings and confront them with the evidence, I would imagine half of them would commit suicide that afternoon. The reason that they're getting away with it is because nobody's ever confronted them. And that the so-called checks and balances, say for like beyond nuclear, truly some of the worst people imaginable. Helen Caldicott, truly a disgusting traitor. Arnie Gunnarsson, a hideous monster. Fear wins, right? What a betrayal that they done to you over Fukushima. But it turns out it's way deeper than that. They were sold to you as the people that were anti-nuclear, but they're the furthest thing from anti-nuclear. Christopher Busby used to make fun of people who call him anti-nuclear. He's the furthest thing from anti-nuclear. And that's what when you're learning about this subject, and you go up on YouTube, for instance, they're going to feed you that media over and over on your cell phone, on your laptops, on your tablets, everything. All your news cycle will be full of news from them. You'll start watching, they're pretty nice looking people. They're pretty decent the way they talk and incredible education. Helen Caldicott wrote 14 anti-nuclear books, for goodness sakes. And I realized, let me play a clip of Helen Caldicott, who got 14, she was nominated for a Nobel Prize, was it? Everybody was trying to sell me Helen Caldicott. There we go. I mean, it's astounding. This one, yeah. This is a short version. And I put this picture and that picture. This is what it looks like, and that's what she says it looked like. She's asked about it in this particular interview. Does it really look like the building to the left? She said, yeah, the Japanese are really tidy people. Well, the building is actually gone. They didn't build a new building there. It simply didn't happen. You got to hear it yourself to believe it. I might have to check the volume for you. I'll be right back.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
She's got very tidy people. So how many people think that it looks like that when it actually looks like this? And when she was asked, she says they're tidy people. Now, she didn't do that interview she didn't come out with that narrative a single time. I'm going to play one more clip. I really want to drive the point home. This is her talking about Reactor 4. And by the way, that's what Reactor 4 looked like when she was talking about it.
Building 4 is also similarly fragile, and it's got a huge cooling pool on top with all its fuel.
Now, first off, you see what's left of the building over there. The building was 190 feet tall. There's only this little stump there, and you can see it's destroyed all the way to the ground. And she's saying they're getting the fuel at the top of the buildings. Let me start that again.
Building 4 is also similarly fragile, and it's got a huge cooling pool on top with all its fuel rods, but they have been removing them. And it's been a very delicate procedure, and they've removed almost all. So if that collapsed now, I think it would probably be okay.
And she was going around doing hundreds of interviews where she would regurgitate that narrative. She wrote 14 anti-nuclear books. She's a doctor, for goodness sakes. She comes across as a very nice person, but she's absolutely unequivocally got no attributes of a human whatsoever. Principle 5 of the International Atomic Energy Agency, fundamental safety principle. The team of experts, who we don't know who they are, the team of experts will provide reassurance to the public, like Helen Caldecott, right? I think everything is fine. They're very tidy people. Volume reduction and managed recycling of removed soil. It's not soil, it's radioactive waste. It's in accordance with the technology development strategy. The Ministry of Environment Japan basic concept prescribes a dose criterion of an additional effective dose of 1 millisievert per year as a basis to derive a screening level. Well, the radiation in the soil is not measured in microsieverts or millisieverts. It's measured in becquerels, physical atoms that are pulsing energy every second. A becquerel is a pulse of energy from an atom. And so the best way to describe it is not by becquerels, but by physical atoms. Because we know they pulse energy every second at the speed of light. Well, just short it. And I've had people correct me, Dan, it's not the speed of light. Yeah, but it's so close to the speed of light, it's imperceivable in the difference. Yeah, but Dan, it's not the speed of light. And so they get you caught up in these little nuances, arguments. That means nothing. If I shoot you with a bullet almost at the speed of light or at the speed of light, does it matter? No. If that energy hits your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, your organs, and if it's not going the speed of light, does it do less damage than it does if it's almost the speed of light? Dose criterion can be met by using recycled soil with a level of radioactivity of 8,000 atoms per kilogram or less. So if you multiply by 66.6, which brings you up to a square meter, that's over 500,000 atoms per square meter. In any case, the dose criterion can be met by using recycled soil with a level of radioactivity 8,000 atoms a kilogram or less. This is insanity that we're having that conversation. The team of experts, who nobody knows who they are, except they're associated with a genocide machine called International Atomic Energy Agency. And the fact that they use cesium with an A would imply that they're hooked up with the British. That the British had an influence in that narrative. And as anybody knows, that covers this subject, the nuclear industry at all, knows the British are just, the nuclear industry in Britain are just unbelievable hideous. Demonstrating the potential for safe and beneficial use in different applications. So they're saying now that the soil has the potential for safe and beneficial use. Safe and beneficial use. Nuclear waste demonstrate the potential for safe and beneficial use. They didn't spend $28 billion picking up 30 million one-tons of bags because of beneficial use. And the team of experts will contribute to public understanding. And that the Ministry of Environment, Japan, will retain full responsibilities for a radiological perspective for the appropriate management of the recycled soil, which absolves the government, the universities, the nuclear industry, the regulatory agencies, and everybody else. It all comes back to the Ministry of Environment, which are the very last people that should be in charge of radiation. The very, very, very last. And there's never a name. You don't get a single name of who these people are in the official report. You don't know who the team of experts is. It's pretty convenient. It's like a fantasy, a fairy tale, right? Of evil. Does Japan-grown food in a nuclear wasteland and deadly soil prove the pro-nuclear or hateful terrorists? And I want to put hateful in there because they hate you. I want to remind you that they actually hate you. That's why they got that job, is because they hate you. Not because it's a good job and everything else. There's lots of evil jobs they can choose. They choose that one because that's the evilest job that you can get, is working for the International Atomic Energy Agency. When you work for them, you're anointed and crowned as extra evil. Everybody knows to fear you in the industry. Oh crap, he's from the IAEA. He must be evil, or she must be insidiously evil. And if you're a female with the International Atomic Energy Agency, you're considered even more eviler than the males. And these are terrorists. These have every single attribute of a terrorist and many, many more. The team of experts, this is interesting. The team of experts noted that the level of management control that is needed to ensure safety of the recycling. So why do you need a level of management, and why do you need a team of experts if it's safe to reuse? Can be reduced over time due to radioactive decay. So they're refusing to acknowledge that there's anything there but low level or fast decaying isotopes. So they're refusing to acknowledge plutonium or curium or uranium or americium or neptunium or strontium or anything like that. That's what that statement actually means. And special attention is no longer required when public exposure to radiation is low as reasonably achievable. Well, if you take nuclear waste and you can't get it to go any lower, then that's reasonably achievable, see? Well, I mean, it is what it is. We can't get it to go any lower. Well, don't say it any lower. Say it's reasonably achievable. How can you pick up 30 million one-ton bags, then claim you only got 14 million one-ton bags, and then claim that it's an important asset and resource, and that you should grow food into it? How could the nuclear industry ever get that? No one would have predicted that originally. That was why we have all the checks and balances. And why is the International Atomic Energy Agency the authority worldwide on nuclear when they don't have any authority in any country? They're a corporation. Like McDonald's, they don't have any authority. They can't compel a country to do something. They're just a subsidy of UN, which shouldn't exist in the first place. And then the team of experts, nobody knows who the team of experts is. Why not tell us who the team of experts is? Kathleen Higley, Jerry Thomas, Wade Allison, who is it? Rod Adams, who is it? We know it's the worst of the worst, because they would line up for the job, right? The team of experts observed that the Ministry of Environment Japan needs to consider the point at which no further management in terms of radiological protection is required, which, if you're honest, is a couple of billion years down the road. If you're a monster, then you would write a statement like that right there. The team of experts defines a holistic strategy. That's just, if you look at the word holistic, that's the strangest word to see used here. And the team of experts expect that the removed soil and waste to be sent for final disposal could be assigned as low-level waste. So the stuff that should be going to a final disposal, the radioactive, could be assigned as low-level waste or very low-level waste, according to their classification, International Atomic Energy Agency's classification scheme, defined in GSG 1. So the final disposal, the stuff that you're not going to grow food in and use in your community, the high-level waste, could be reassigned as low-level waste and very low-level waste. At what point does this world come to their senses and say, hey, you know, you're fired. We're not going to put up with you no more. Where's all the patriots? You got all these patriots on this planet. Or patriots. And you got patriot groups and patriot clubs. And they got enormous amounts of resources, and they do nothing. I can't comprehend how a team of experts, and nobody knows who it is, can set the stage for the end of humanity. I can't comprehend that. And that nobody is going to challenge that. I can't comprehend it. I can't rationalize this level of evil. This is a level of evil that's not tenable. We cannot sit in silence. You can't sit there and pretend this is not happening. I would love to go challenge these. Everywhere on the planet, I would go there and challenge them. If I had a foundation that would support me, I would put together a decent team. We would get them up to speed, and we would go challenge these in a way that they've never been challenged like we're doing right now. We're just having a conversation, but no one's ever even done that. Done an educational program. The team of experts that nobody knows who it is, who refuses to acknowledge there's millions, an extra 16 million one-ton bags that are missing. Where are the 16 million one-ton bags that are unaccounted for? Why are they not acknowledging 16 million one-ton bags? The team of experts. Oh, by the way, did I mention the team of experts? Revitalization of the Fukushima nuclear wasteland. Oh, and the finding of the advance efforts for the managed recycling of removed soil can be used as a useful case study for references by other countries. So they're saying, because they managed to push this through, then other countries can take nuclear waste and do the same friggin' thing. The biggest threat to humanity is silence. And you don't have a university on the planet you can turn to. They'll cut your throat too. Wait, if you're foolish enough to go there, they're going to cut your throat. So calling them terrorists and hateful terrorists as that, I think is pretty appropriate, isn't it? Does Japan-grown food in a nuclear wasteland and deadly soil prove the pro-nuclear are hateful terrorists? Well, hell yeah, Dana. That's exactly what we're talking about. And I would give anything to be able to go and hold these people accountable. I think that the world is going to wake up. And so they understand that, and they're going to probably have a nuclear war so they can blame the damage from the nuclear industry of 80 years and the Pulse event from 2011 on a nuclear war. Because that's what a coward would do. The degenerate IAEA will continue to support Japan in its further efforts for the hoodwinking of humanity. In conclusion, we're only at page 11, by the way, of 86 pages. The Ministry of Environment Japan, proactive approach to managing removed soil and waste, only managed to make 16 million tons disappear. That's a pretty neat trick already. Remove soil and waste arising from, not nuclear waste, but waste. Refuse to acknowledge what it is. From decontamination activities, from radioactive decontamination activities, by the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. Not academics and not corporations. Reflects the commitment in ensuring safety and protecting public health and promoting environmental sustainability in the nuclear wasteland. The international team of experts at the IAEA. What do? They take this team of experts, they stick them in a sarcophagus, and then they wait for another event and roll them back out again? Because they can't function in reality, can they? And beyond. Recycling initiatives to minimize the volume of radioactive waste require, so 75% of the 13 million cubic meters of removed soil, some estimates, like the media is saying 14 million, but the International Atomic Energy Agency's official report says 13 million. And 300,000 cubic meters of ash from incinerating the 1-ton bags of radiation, which liberates the radiation, by the way, back into the environment, the majority of it. But they're acknowledging that the ash from the incineration of the considered low-level stuff is so radioactive that they can't get rid of it, and they got 300,000 cubic meters of that. Just 300,000 metric tons. But it's harmless. But they can't get rid of the ash because it's too radioactive, which is less than 10% of the original volume, which also means they can recontaminate the environment because that's just endless dirty bombs. And these incinerators are temporary incinerators, by the way. And we've covered stories where they have 18 of those temporary incinerators they burn radioactive waste in, right? That was that's different though than the 1-ton bags we're talking about. And these incinerators are something like 80, 90 feet tall. These are huge facilities. They're temporary incinerators, and dismantling them is a big problem because they're so radioactive. It's literally the most idiotic industry imaginable, and that they captured the universities, they captured by proxy then the journalists and everything else. If you capture the schools of mass destruction, the universities, well, you capture everything else too. They are an infestation, and this is a biological weapon that they've unleashed that never goes away. It's here for billions of years, floating around, destroying humanity. temporary incineration facilities. So the combustible material, bags, plants, roots, which are radioactive, by the way, obtained from the separation treatment. So the people that are working there are getting incredible doses. And we've covered stories of these facilities where people were mangled and killed in the machines, right? Because they shouldn't be there. They don't know what they're doing. They hire the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. Obtained from the separation treatment are sent to temporary incineration facilities. These are big facilities. These are not little facilities. And then the ash, what they call fly ash, obtained from the temporary ash treatment facilities, is mainly stored in the waste storage facilities. But small parts of the fly ash is currently treated as test facilities for fly ash cleaning technologies. Incineration facilities. So the fly ash cleaning technology, so they're using the ash, the radioactive ash, it's too radioactive to get rid of, so they're going to use it for cleaning. You're going to use nuclear waste and then say it's cleaning. For further volume reduction of the waste. I mean, calling them monsters is being polite. Calling them terrorists is actually being polite. These are the enemy of every species on this planet. That's as clear as anything. They refuse to contain lethal emissions that are lethal to everything with replicating cells. What else would you call it? They call you scum, you should call them terrorists. The internationally agreed waste management hierarchy supports volume reduction, reuse, recycling where possible. Why would you reuse, reduce, if that's what you want to call it, and recycle nuclear waste? It's hideous nuclear waste. And you don't have a repository anywhere on the planet to store it because it's so deadly. So why are you going to reuse? Excuse me. Why are you going to reuse it? Why are you going to recycle it? You can't recycle something that kills everything. We're only at page 13. Clearly, I'm not going to get through this tonight. Promoting the managed recycling, I'm not even trying, right? Because you can't rush through this stuff. Promoting the managed recycling of removed soil arising from the decontamination. So you got soil from decontamination, now you're going to recycle it and use it for growing food and everything else. It does not make any sense. It's like taking burnt oil from an old car, putting it in a bottle, sticking it in the fridge and calling it jam. It's not jam. It's waste. It'll always be waste. It'll never be nothing but waste. All selected experts have considerable experience in the areas under the scope of the IAEA system project. Previously worked with the International Atomic Energy Agency on radioactive waste management, volume reduction, and recycling. Well, who are they? Is it a crime to want to know who the monsters are? Apparently so. So the international staff members, International Atomic Energy Agency staff members, and internationally experts selected by the International Atomic Energy Agency are hereafter referred to as the team of experts. That's page 14. The team of monsters. In this act, soil arising from decontamination activities is defined as removed soil. Not radioactive soil, but removed soil. It's not soil anymore, it's nuclear waste. So designating it as soil and then as removed soil means you can reuse it for just about anything you want. International Experts Meeting, IEM. So when you see IEM like that, that's what they're referring to, the International Experts Meeting. It was not open to the public. But why wouldn't you have it open to the public? because you were afraid that if somebody heard what you're saying, they would try to warn people, right? Which is consistent with the International Atomic Energy Agency common approach for technical meetings. The team of experts, the unknown. Upper part. The upper part is used as roads and agricultural land. Upper parts. Can be used inside and outside of Fukushima Prefecture. The Japanese government position the reconstruction of Fukushima as a top priority. You can't reconstruct a nuclear wasteland. It's not as simple as building another house. It's a nuclear wasteland. Decontamination contributed to the reduction of radiation risk. How? You're just going to reuse all the stuff from decontamination to grow food in. It doesn't even make sense. Make effective use of removed soil, which is originally a value to resource. A value to resource. Justification, one of the fundamental radiation protection principles for the IAEA safety standards. The action must do more good than harm. How can you do any good by growing food in 500,000 atoms per square meter? Because that's what 8,000 atoms a kilogram is, right? Identifying removed soil that is suitable for managed recycling is consistent with the IAEA safety standards. To minimize the generation of radioactive waste. So they call it soil, but then in the next part of the sentence they call it radioactive waste. Identifying removed soil. No, identifying radioactive waste. Because it doesn't work if you say that. See, if you identify radioactive waste that is suitable for recycling, is consistent with the IAEA safety standards. Well, how can it be a safety standard if you're going to call it soil when it's actually radioactive waste? You're just horrible people. Well, they're not even people, are they? At screening level 8,000 becquerels a kilogram, which is atoms, which is 532,000 atoms per square meter. Multiply by 66.6 to get a square meter. A kilogram, right? So now they're talking about 10 microsieverts. Well, why would you call it microsieverts when you just call it becquerels? Microsieverts is from when you're close to the fuel. If you're getting microsieverts far away from the site, it means you're breathing in physical radioactive anthropogenic man-made atoms. You're in the worst case scenario. You need to shave your heads, your eyebrows, and dispose of all the clothing that you were wearing, and scrub yourself for hours and hours and hours and hope that you got some of it off you. Further reductions to 10 microsieverts per year was possible by installing sufficient shielding cover soil. So again, that's acknowledging that it's incredibly radioactive. If you've got to put a cover over it, it doesn't meet the attributes of soil. It was never soil once you put it in those 1-ton bags. One of the worst humans on the planet, the World Nuclear News, I don't know if they've ever put their name on a story in over a decade of covering that site. It's very unusual. And I noticed that over the last year or so, they don't show up in my news search, do they? They actually blocked my IP address or something, I guess. They're real life scumbags, these people. They're insidious scumbags, aren't they? The World Nuclear News. They're a lobbying group for the nuclear industry. Their job is to come out and pretend the nuclear industry has some redeeming qualities. And the World Nuclear News, supposed to be an authority, is saying there's 30 million cubic meters. There's actually 30 million 1-ton bags. Let me show you that again from 2019. And I know last night I was so burnt out. I apologize to everybody. I was so tired. I couldn't do a show. And the same thing tonight. I'm no better off tonight. So to go read this story from 2016, officials at the Ministry of Environment have set up, the Ministry of Environment, which is the same people we're talking about, said in 2016 that they had 30 million one-ton bags, and they would deteriorate after 3 years and need to be repackaged. So the Ministry of Environment had already acknowledged that they have 30 million one-ton bags. So why are they claiming there's only 13 million one-ton bags today? Where did the other bags go to? And all these stories are the same, right? Oh, well, the interim storage facility covers 16 square kilometers. 16 square kilometers. So it should be around 32 square kilometers for the 30 million one-ton bags, but they're only acknowledging 13 million one-ton bags. And they plan to recycle 75% of the nuclear waste, which is low levels compared to what? Compared to a fuel rod? Well, compared to a fuel rod, everything is low-level waste, despite the fact there's no such thing as a low-level waste when it comes to anthropogenic man-made radiation. So they want to use the soil for coastal protection. So it washes out into the ocean. Agricultural land, so you get sick and don't complain anymore. And land reclamation. Who wants to live in that spot? Why would you use that in those particular attributes? IAEA declares Japan's plan to reuse decontaminated soil in Fukushima is safe. Well, under no circumstances should you expect your loving media, your hateful, horrific, degenerate media to educate you or inform you or enlighten you in any sense and shape of that word. Don't under any circumstances get your hopes up. And there's all these stories. IAEA says Fukushima's soil recycling plant meets the safety standards. And they all regurgitate the exact same narratives. Butt plugs for the nuclear industry is what we call them, right? International Atomic Energy Agency supports Japan recycling. And who is this bitch I see there? Who is this cunt alongside of shitface right there? I don't know who she is, but I can guarantee you we will eventually find out who this bitch is. Japan to start reusing soil from Fukushima despite public concerns. Well, don't go to the Independent expecting any journalism. They're the first ones to cut your throat. And don't go near, like the United Kingdom, of course. You can buy peaches from a nuclear wasteland if you're so inclined, says Matt Regal, piece of shit Matt Regal. Peaches that were grown in a nuclear disaster site. Just another journalist that can't wait to cut your throat. That's what Matt is. You may recall the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. I doubt it. And if you do, you don't know nothing. If you're not familiar with the subject and you heard the media, then you are the least informed person on the planet. He said, let's just open the calculator app, roughly $33 per peach. And he puts 3333s there, right? Haratz told CBS News there are no restrictions in the United Kingdom in place on the import of food produced in Fukushima. Not just peaches, but any food, right? Johnson, Nutjob Johnson, removed all restrictions. For adults, the same year that he was ousted as the Prime Minister of Britain. But 2 years before that, he removed all restriction for cereal and baby food from Fukushima Prefecture. Do you eat baby food? Or does babies eat it? That's right, babies eat it. So why did he wait another 2 years to remove restriction on food for adults if they're not trying to murder you? If they're not murdering you is more like it. He said, but more like I'll get one that's a little radioactive. And you got to be a worm to write a story like that. You literally got to be a gobblish worm to write a story like that. Has taken a beating since the tsunami. and we hear this narrative all the time, that caused the nuclear, because you don't want the nuclear people to think the nuclear industry as capable of doing this on its own. So they always got to throw that down your throat. Every single story, you'll see that framed that particular way. That hurt the region's branding. My goodness, man, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. What do you mean hurt the branding? You murderer. And this is what I mean. A journalist is not somebody that you would want to live on the same street as these people. I wouldn't want to live in the same city as these disgusting. They look like humans, but they got none of the attributes. And whenever you try to get AI to create a picture of a journalist, this is what it throws at you, right? When you say give him a big teeth, it might try to remove his gums or something so the teeth look bigger. I noticed with AI. But saying that the nuclear disaster that hurt the region's branding. So you write this article, and now you can pay your mortgage, you can take the wife and the kids on a world cruise, the kid can go to the best colleges, you can go out and buy all the toys, you can have cocktail parties. All you got to do is cut the throat of everybody else. Right? That's what a journalist does. A journalist's job is to cut everybody's throat. Look clean, look cut. But the minute you look a little bit deeper, you realize these are the worst possible humans conceivable. And that they spent all these years 80 years telling you it's like a banana. Obviously, clearly, that has nothing to do with radiation. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. That's just a fraction. And every nuclear power plant is hemorrhaging radiation into your environment. And just because you can't perceive it, you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it, and they roll out these academics and journalists, when you look a little bit deeper, you realize these are just absolutely monstrous people. Yeah, I mean, they look like people, but I can assure you these are not people. In all honesty, I didn't think I was going to make it this far tonight. I'm just saying I'm burnt out doesn't do it justice. And I apologize. Hopefully I feel a bit better over the next couple of weeks and I just get on with the show, right? I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that. I'm just stating a particular fact that I think what's going on is that I'm upset that the world is not fighting back. You know, I spent over a decade running an educational program and doing research expeditions, extensive, unbelievable, difficult research expeditions. I've never stopped trying. And my trying is 24-hour-a-day obsession, right? I've been at this for a very long time, long before Fukushima. I've been at it almost 23 years now. And because I actually care about everybody. I care about all the birds and insects. I care about all the animals, the whales. I care about all of it. And I care about the future of humanity. I can guarantee you there is no future of humanity. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is just a snot on the snot eater's fingers, which is the United Nations, they got all kinds of these radiation organizations to fuck you over. UNSCLEAR, IRPA, the IPRC, UNSCLEAR, the International Atomic Energy Agency, just a few of them. And all of them back each other up, and they all look like separate organizations. They're all the same organization. And the World Health Organization, of course. The evil of the evil. All United Nations. And this is an agenda that they've been at for a very long time. like pre-Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Well, that's the team of experts, huh? There's one of the team of experts right there. There's another one of the mysterious team of experts. They're not a team of experts. They're serial killers and monsters disguised as suits. Like the buildings actually blew up. There's actually 30 million one-ton bags. And then anybody that avoids the nuclear food is considered racist. And that the food was banned by 55 countries for over a decade. $30 million tons a bag. In Tokyo, it was 29 million atoms per square meter. These are absurd numbers. So you 100% unequivocally should leave Tokyo. But you shouldn't live anywhere near close to the Great Lakes in North America. You shouldn't even live in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom, because after Chernobyl it closed 9,400 farms, which is proof that all the water, air, and land was contaminated. You can't just contaminate farms. Radiation just doesn't fly all over your country. And when you look at the plume models, look at the plume model down there. That's 26 days later, the whole planet covered in radioactive fallout, cesium-137, which the French government said was 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And by the way, cesium pulses energy 600 feet. Not a meter, but 600 feet. An invisible blanket that never goes away of snow. So it's quite interesting. Let me bring that back up again. Does Japan growing food in a nuclear wasteland in deadly soil prove the pro-nuclear or hateful terrorist? So originally, this is quite interesting too, isn't it? So I originally had 10 more votes than I had thumbs up, and now I have more thumbs up than I have votes. Isn't that interesting? Like the food wasn't banned by 55 countries for a decade because it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. It was banned because the reactors have ejected their entire inventories out of the buildings. The tanks were built in 2013 to manipulate you into thinking that they were storing it when you can't store something that doesn't exist anymore. Right, Eisenhower warned you about United Nations. That's who he was talking about. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex, and that the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist, and we must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. And we should take nothing for granted, and only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper enmeshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense, which the UN has 195 militaries, with our peaceful methods and goals, and so that security and liberty may prosper together. But what was it George Bush Sr. said about the United Nations?
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
So
we have before us the opportunity to forge.
That's George Bush calling the United Nations a New World Order. And what will Raphael Grossi do? He sniffs bicycle seats, right? Atoms for Humanity, the A-10 Warthog. It shoots 1.5 tons of dirty bombs a minute. Canada removed all restrictions on radioactive food on June the 14th, 2011, 93 days. 93 days, 93 days after Fukushima. Well, 55 countries banned the food in 14 prefectures for over a decade. So does anybody appreciate that the journalists are not actually in Reactor 4? But that's what they're doing. They're claiming they're in Reactor 4. Now, what could compel the major medias worldwide to pretend they're in a building that don't exist, if not an extinction event? That's Reactor 4. By the way, they've done the same thing for Reactor 3. You had studies showing 1 million atoms of xenon-133 in the United States and Canada per square meter underground. You had 20 million atoms of iodine-131 per liter fell in the United States. But this is a study out of Canada. So it happened to Canada too. Now, for every iodine-131, there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129. And another study in Ottawa, Canada, showed exactly that. 220 million atoms of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life per liter in radioactive fallout. By the way, the 131 is unbelievably effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of every species, not just humans. But there was 10 times more 132 and 30 times more 133, and that's 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid gland than the incredible effective 131 was. And so when you put all this together, that's enough iodine to saturate the thyroid glands of every species and every human. And why are the populations missing of the migratory birds and species? Why are all the whales showing up emaciated? Why are all the birds, by the millions, showing up emaciated? Because we destroyed the food chain. And we know this because we went out and done the research expeditions. And we've done those research expeditions for 6 years. And what we discovered, I'm just waiting for the system to catch up for some reason, was the species to your left are exterminated. I went back for 5 more years after that year, and the species didn't come back, which is the soup of life. The ocean is the soup, was the soup of life. And so normally I could never put my Zodiac on the beach because you would punch a bunch of holes in it. And I used to pick 20,000 of them every day, up to 100 days straight, of the red sea urchin when I was doing food harvesting. The starfish would touch each other. There were so many of them. And then the mussels, and the whelks, the snails, the clams, the oysters, the gooey ducks, the razorback clams, the little necks, the manila clams. There was incredible, unbelievable diversity. There was 700 algae. And inside the 700 algae was 5,500 invertebrates without the backbones. They're missing. The species to your left, there was also around 80 different types of sponges. They all came in multiple vibrant colors. There was around 78 species of starfish. They all came in multiple vibrant colors. There was this unbelievable diversity of shellfish. And that is now exterminated. And we know that because we've done the entire coast year after year after year after year, and those species didn't come back. This is clearly, we had the nuclear meltdowns, we got the radioactive fallout, we have everything documented, and this has wiped out the species. There was 480 species of worms in the tidal zones and in the ocean. And I used to be a commercial diver. I'm familiar with every one of these species. We would go into these bays, these exact bays, in fact, and anchor at nighttime. And when the weather was really bad, we would go collect. Clams and gooey ducks and oysters and stuff like this, and have a big seafood scarf. And now the coastline is stripped naked. Like, they're not pretending they're in a building because there's like a banana and a potato chip and walk in the sunshine. The food wasn't banned by 55 countries for a decade because it's like a banana and potato chip and walk in the sunshine. The radioactive plumes, this is a plutonium dispersal based on venting. It's not even based on a single meltdown. So we've done the research. We quantify every single one of our assertions with documentation. I'm not some random person. I'm deeply involved in this subject long before Fukushima. And I've been obsessed with trying to wake this planet up and have a conversation. And to my absolute horror, the population is sleepwalking into the biggest event in human history, and the media are the ones that have got us into this predicament. The reason that we're all in such a desperate, unbelievable what the hell am I listening to? Is there something in the background? I see the meter rising and falling. I don't know. Anyway. Bear with me. I got to delete everything we've done tonight so that I can find my way for the next show. Because we cover so much material every day that if you look at the whole year, how much we cover, it's really spectacular. I mean, we really do try our best. We unequivocally, we go through, we don't shy away from anything. We're 100% honest 100% of the times. All right, so I made it 2 hours. I was determined to go 2 hours tonight because I'm stupid like that. And just let me bring up, just bear with me one more time. Bear with me. Well, that's not it. I don't think. Oh, that is it. Okay. That picture there. That was the thumbnail tonight, right? I just wanted to have that up on the screen. Until you left it clearly, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency. When you look at what they've done and what they continue to do and what they plan to do, how are they not the biggest terrorists on this planet? How is that possible that they're not the biggest threat to humanity and the 8 million species? All right, so let's close the poll down, I suppose. We can do that, can we? Where are we to here? Oh, right here. Does Japan growing food... Hi, everybody. Does Japan growing food in a nuclear wasteland and deadly soil prove the pro-nuclear or hateful terrorist? And if you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. We're going to end the poll, and last night's video, the night before, and tonight's video are all recorded. And I have already converted, because these files are about 80 gigabytes each. And so I have really nice conversion software, so you don't really lose much in the conversion. And so I'm going to be uploading them to BitChute, my BitChute channel, because these videos after 12 hours get longer, and I want to have examples of them out there where they don't have the software into them. They're putting software in the video to track you, I believe. Or they're chopping stuff out too and adding stuff in there. And so what I do every night now is I have this little pipe cleaner, and I wrap it around my finger before the show starts, and that's so I don't forget to click the record button. And then after the show, it takes me about an hour to convert the video because I'm an idiot for punishment. But I'm determined that we have to start getting the videos out there without the interference from the pro-nuclear lobby group at YouTube. So we're going to end the poll. I will see everybody tomorrow night. And I'm going to play the same song I've been playing for a while now. One of James Lucid's songs that he produced. It has a good beat to it. And we think of it as the scarecrow for Calm Down Charlie, Yoshida Mashada. And since we started playing it, well, the first time we played it, Yoshida Mashada went into a total panic mode. Complete panic. And so we're going to play that tonight. We'll see everybody on Sunday, unless there's some breaking news. Or I get bored or something. Who knows? I've been known to do worse. You have a great night. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care, folks.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie. Charlie steals the whole radio show.